Okay, hello and welcome to Create a Spark episode 2. Today we're going to be talking about DAO. And today we have Kaitlyn Davies, and she's going to explain all of the things about DAO, what it is, why you should use it, why you should get involved in one if you want to start one yourself. A quick intro about Kaitlyn. Kaitlyn is Canadian. She's from Toronto, but you're currently living in Lisbon, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and she's a creative professional and radio host. She spends her time exploring interdisciplinary intersections of technology, society, and music through research, facilitation, and community organizing in her roles at Friends with Benefits and Refraction DAOs. She also hosts radio shows on Refuge Worldwide and Kashmir Radio. So thank you for joining us, Kaitlyn.
Thank you
Um,
for having me. It's great to be here.
Thanks for taking the time. I briefly met Kaitlyn at the Reeperbahn Festival through my involvement with Key Change last year. So yeah, Reeperbahn was my first time there, and it was really like one of my favorite events in Europe yet.
Yeah, it was
Um,
amazing. It was also my first time at Reeperbahn Festival. And I had known about the festival for a long time. There's a big Canadian contingent of music industry people who go to Reeperbahn. So it was really nice to get to go this time, also with the Key Change program as a workshop facilitator. It was really amazing and got to meet amazing people like yourself.
Thanks. So, uh, in the last episode, we were talking with Shannon Herber, who works on Ayogiverse, and we've been talking a lot about Web3 and metaverse and alternative platforms for artists to get involved. So, before we start, can you give us a quick background on how you got started in this particular sector and some of your past work and how you got into this?
Yeah, of course. I like to start at the very beginning. My first job, or I guess internship in music, was at a college radio station in Toronto, where I'm from. And I pretty quickly kind of developed this like deep love for the inner workings of the music industry that weren't really previously visible to me. So I went on to work at an artist and brand development company. I managed a band. I did some publicity stuff, kind of a lot of projects across the board. A few years later, I moved to Europe. I moved to the UK, to London. And I was actually working in film festivals at the time when I moved, but got back into music after a few months. I worked at the music streaming platform Boiler Room, which some folks might be familiar with, primarily focused on dance and electronic music. And worked there for a few years while still kind of nurturing some other projects. And in 2018, I moved to Berlin. In Berlin, I kind of made the real kind of switch in my career from working more on the event production and marketing side of things to a more recorded music digital focus. So I worked at a record label called K7 in their digital distribution department, and soon after took on a full-time role at SoundCloud, the music streaming platform. I feel like SoundCloud was where I got my like first taste for the real working relationship between technology and music. I had always been interested in the sort of wider intersection of technology and culture, or even just like the relationship between being a human being and technology. But working at SoundCloud was the first time I really had experience working alongside product teams, and working with like a technological stack directly. During this time, I was also working on some other creative projects. I formed a collective called Coquo, which really allowed me, alongside some other amazing folks, to further explore this intersection of art, technology, music, and science. And we hosted several events, both in person and online. And in the early days of 2021, hosted an online series investigating how and what possibilities new technology opened up for the music industry. So we focused primarily on NFTs. If folks remember, this was kind of around the time of the big NFT boom, early 2021. So like lots of big ticket NFT sales and kind of NFTs and Web3 technology reaching a more critical cultural mass. And so yeah, one of the workshops was on NFTs. The other one was on avatar technology and digital identities, which I guess might now be looped into or lumped into some sort of metaverse category. But I was really interested in exploring what it means to kind of obfuscate in-person identities with digital identities. So that was kind of my first foray into Web3 technology. I, at the beginning of 2021, alongside the NFT boom, had just been doing tons of research, and this was still in the throes of lockdowns in most parts of the world. So everyone was really still at home on their computers, and it was a really cool time to participate in knowledge sharing and getting to kind of wrap my head around these bigger concepts of decentralization and blockchains.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to think that we have so much talk currently about NFTs and blockchain and things like that. And blockchain talks I've been listening to those for probably the past 6 or 7 years now. But by the time they hit kind of the mainstream, everyone is just sort of ready to say, "Oh, well, this is probably a fad or something." It's like, oh, it's been developing for a while. Um, so
Yeah, I think I have a joke with a few friends that it felt like in maybe 2016 or 2017, every music industry conference had a blockchain panel. And then for whatever reason, maybe it was just too complicated, or people, the sort of energy behind the technology wasn't there. And then fast forward a few years to 2021, 2022, now it feels like, again, every music industry conference is like interested in talking about the technology again, and there's sort of been a new breath of life into the space.
yeah, I mean, I hope that it's going to really get some traction. So you work with two DAOs in particular. You have Refraction and Friends with Benefits. Talking about Refraction, that's the one that I became familiar with first. So can you talk a little bit about what Refraction is, what goes on there, how you can be involved, what kind of people it might be for?
Yeah, of course. I mean, is it worth backing up a little bit and just kind of briefly explaining what a DAO is?
Yes, that was on my
Yeah,
list of
yeah,
questions, but
okay.
maybe we should jump to that first.
I I feel like maybe it's just so I know sometimes I remember the first time I heard about what a DAO was, and I like just didn't even understand what people were saying. I was like trying to Google it, spelling it like DOW. But a DAO, DAO, is a decentralized autonomous organization. Very simply put, it's like a group chat with a shared bank account, where the money for that bank account can come from a variety of different places, and what you do with that money can, be a variety of different things. But at its heart, that's sort of what a DAO is. Especially, there's different types of DAOs. There's like investment DAOs and social DAOs. So Friends with Benefits and Refraction are primarily or are social DAOs. And speaking to Refraction specifically, Refraction is a group of people who organize music and digital art events all over the world and on the internet. We sort of had a variety of different projects, but our cornerstone is the Refraction Festival. The first one, which took place actually long before Refraction was a DAO, it took place in, I believe, the early days of 2020. I think it was end of 2020. So it was when things were still really in lockdown and the festival was totally digital. That was the first one. And then the sort of founders of the DAO, or the founders, came together to form Refraction DAO. And we put together what we called a decentralized music festival all throughout 2022. So we kind of had a series of events in and through March, April, May, and concluding in June of last year with a sort of final event at NFT NYC. And then we kind of rebooted the festival idea in Miami at the end of last year during Miami Art Week in December 2022. That was a real whirlwind, and kind of the first time we got to work on what people might think of when they hear the word music or the words music festival. It was a 2-day sort of day and nighttime experience with talks and digital art galleries and music performances. So Refraction going into 2023, actually it's great timing, this interview, because yesterday we announced our sort of move to a membership model. So Refraction has always had a Refract token since it's been a DAO, but now we are moving into an NFT membership model. So anyone is welcome to buy a Refract Pass, which is an NFT that sort of unlocks your access into our digital world, which is a Discord and some token gated sites with exclusive content. So yeah, it's a really exciting time to I guess I'm biased, but I think it's a really exciting time to be a part of Refraction, because we've been working together as a DAO for about a year now, and we've been able to see sort of how far you can go with collaborations, whether that's like physically how far, or in terms of like ideas, really like kind of imagining new ways to collaborate, whether that's like between individuals, between different types of artists, between different types of institutions. We've had the pleasure of working with like a lot of other DAOs and festivals all over the world. So now I think is a really exciting time to like dig into our deeper membership model and kind of further push the boundaries of collaboration.
So if somebody wants to get involved with being in Refraction, how can they get involved in doing that? What should they do?
Yeah, you can. Our website is refractionfestival.com. All of the information about how to join the DAO, how to purchase a Refract Pass is all up there. There is a membership application, but upon approval, you'll be granted access into our Discord, which is where we all collaborate. There's also some sort of, through that membership process, there is the ability to raise your hand and say like, I'm interested in curating, or I'm interested in presenting art. Another way that folks can get involved is through our creative grants program. We're currently in a cycle now. So we decided to allocate $100,000 from our treasury last year to funding creative projects. We ended up funding 26 projects all over the world, and we're kind of in the process of those projects are coming to fruition. We had an artist based in Sao Paulo drop an NFT collection earlier this week. We have somebody in New York dropping a fashion NFT collection with AR filters later this week. We have an event in Kuala Lumpur next month. So these are kind of some ways to tap into Refraction's funding model. And then moving into, we will be doing a second season of creative grants. It kind of remains to be seen exactly when that will happen, but keep your eyes out for the application period in the first half of the year for sure.
So, touching on talking about the sort of model, because the idea behind a DAO is that it's a collective. Nobody's really uh, the head or the boss. It's kind of a democracy. So, in talking about starting up an organization like that and collecting enough to have something like a treasury to then pass along to other artists. I mean, that's really the idea behind. Um, that's the idea behind a lot of these things like blockchain that I think is getting missed in the conversation. That's in the mainstream. Is that the idea is that you're going to take this and then reinvest it. So how have you been able to then start this type of an organization and then pass it along that you can then fund these other projects?
Yeah, I think like I'm happy that you mentioned that because like I think people often look at DAO structures and they're like, wow, a dream, this like flat hierarchy, nobody is like calling the shots. But of course, in any sort of organizational structure, we do have like core teams and nodes at Refraction who make decisions. We kind of, we clear those decisions with the community, but we have this really like I think kind of trusting relationship between the wider community and the core team who are kind of activating on a lot of these things, which is really special. And like I think a lot of people talk about blockchain technologies as being like trustless, but I think you start to realize when you're collaborating with real humans, there's always like an element of trust involved. So kind of earlier last year, we were thinking we were collaborating with people all over the world in New York and Sao Paulo and Montreal and Berlin, but just sort of because of the nature of, I guess, how Refraction was all word of mouth, that we were working with people we had either kind of, we already knew or had already been connected with. And we were kind of trying to like push out we're trying to find new ways to collaborate with people, but in a real effort to decentralize, that's why we facilitated this creative grants program, is because we felt it was really important to like, you didn't even have to at the time be a member of the DAO to apply for the grant, because we really wanted to just like put the word out into the world and see what came back to us. And it was really amazing. We had like projects in Brazil, projects in South Africa, projects in Singapore, projects in Chicago and Washington, and just outside of places some of us had ever even been. So that was really, I think that's a really important part of it, is realizing that, you're only as strong as the group of people around you, and the group of people around you, there's always room for new voices and more voices. And I'm kind of constantly amazed, like every day I feel like I'm reading about a new project or a new person, and it's just exciting to see more and more people enter the space.
Yeah, it's sort of, uh, at least within a sort of music landscape, it feels kind of like we're starting to fracture off because there's such a huge divide, I think. So there's the big name people, the people who are, you know, going to make a huge amount of money. You have the Taylor Swifts, Bad Bunnies, people like that, that just have huge audiences. They have record labels, they have power behind them. And then there's a whole group now who want to move away from the platforms that are there, like Spotify, So I see I see something like the decentralized platforms as the new alternative for people to really start to not just connect, like maybe for somebody who already has a little bit of an audience, but for people to really start gaining traction and to get a community together. That's what I see the benefit of what happening now.
Yeah, I think there's something really interesting about like what you said about fracturing off in that I think sort of what Web 2 dynamics taught us, it was like, how can you get the most number of plays, the most reach, like the most likes, the most comments? And then I think what all of us started to realize is like, what does that actually translate to? If you can buy a lot of those things. And so I think people were kind of have I think like the real question in so many like creative careers is like, how do you build a community around yourself? And there's no one answer to that. You know, everybody has different tools and practices that they engage in to build that community. And I think what I'm really excited about in the kind of Web3 space is people recognizing that like you only have to have 10 people in the room at your like basement noise gig, and that's a community. You know, it's, and if it never gets bigger than that, that's amazing too. You don't, I think, you know, Web 2 kind of promised us this like carrot at the end of the stick, like you can always be chasing to go viral, or you can always hope that you wake up the next morning and your SoundCloud song has hundreds of more plays. But I think what we're realizing in Web 3 is that you can still make you can still build and find sustainable communities, or communities that will help you sustain your art practice. And they don't need to be even thousands of people strong. They can just, you know, they can be hundreds or less than hundreds of people strong. And I'm excited about these kind of like micro communities that continue to flourish.
So now that we've talked about kind of the background and what refraction does, what DAOs are in general, um, I want to share some success stories. I see some, mega success stories every now and then. Maybe some artists were able to get into the NFT game pretty early on, and I think that's kind of where a lot of people jumped on the investment bandwagon. But as far as now is concerned, can you share some success stories with how some of the artists that you know are managing to sell their art or sell their music via something like NFT or via something that they can use Web3 for?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I always talk about one of my collaborators in Coco, the collective I founded. She makes music and visual art under the name Portrait XO. And she has been working in the sort of like artificial intelligence machine learning space for as long as I've known her. And obviously that right now is like is going through like a huge hype cycle, and there's a lot of like attention, and inevitably there's been a lot of attention to her work, and I feel like she's really like getting the flowers she deserves. But she's been experimenting with the Web3 technology over the last year or so. She also runs I guess it's sort of like an online collective, but they are actively releasing music kind of maybe more similar to what people would traditionally think of as a record label, called Sound Obsessed. And Sound Obsessed was one of our creative grants projects actually in Refraction. They were awarded a grant, and they built this like amazing, I highly recommend everybody check out the website. It's just soundobsessed.com. And they built this really amazing, like immersive musical visual, or like audio visual experience and you can buy NFTs through that, through their website. And I just think for her, like we've had conversations about, you know, she sold out a collection of NFTs that were, I think, priced at the equivalent of about 100 euros. And she was like, I would have never been able to put a song up on Bandcamp for 100 euros. That just wouldn't have been a thing. So I think that people in the Web3 space, even though it's quite small, people are interested in valuing, I think for most people, for me, there's most of the songs that I really love and value, and even the ones that I don't value as much, I think that they're worth more than 99 cents. iTunes and really set this idea of a song being worth 99 cents, and Spotify set this idea of every song in the world being worth 9.99 per month. And I think that we're in, at least in the circles that I'm in, like recontemplating the value of a song or of a piece of art. And I think that that, to me, that just feels like a really interesting success story of, like, I can really think of like countless people in my circle who I know can now like pay their rent because they have had access to this technology, or because they have sort of, I made this joke on Twitter yesterday that was like, what if, Web3's innovation in the music industry is just the friends we made along the way? And I've said it to a few people in the last 24 hours. And like, we've all kind of laughed because it's really true. I think sometimes just finding a group of like-minded people who are interested in reconsidering value, who are interested in experimenting with new technologies, sometimes like that is the most valuable part of it at all. Or and sometimes like I think now there's been a lot of people pioneering ideas of this intersection between technology and music for many years now, but now it really is reaching this critical mass, and I think many folks just experimenting in the space are getting a lot more exposure, which I think is net positive.
Yeah, this concept of the value of music, or the value of song, the value of art has also been on my mind the past couple of days, because uh, to kind of hear so much negative press on things like NFTs, and then I have friends who have have put a lot of work into something, and then they release the NFTs to their audience that will buy them. And when I hear someone saying, why am I going to pay $1,000 for this? Why am I going to pay this much for this? But then at the same time, we have companies like Ticketmaster that are then kind of telling us that market value of a ticket can be something like $1,000 per ticket. And then what kind of divided message is being sent, because we have artists that, who have fans who can't afford to go to their shows. And then at the same time, we're saying, I'm only going to really pay for Spotify because that's it. So, uh, you know, you either make money off of what it is that you do as your music or art, or you don't get anything at all. And I think overall
I think,
we're kind of
yeah,
telling people that we don't value their art, we don't value their music, but everyone consumes it all day, every day.
yeah, it's I think it's also hard when you're in this bubble of music lovers, which I've definitely in the last few years come to realize, because I would see, and this is, many people have done research reports on this, but I remember looking at stuff at SoundCloud, and people, you're considered a music super fan if you spend more than, I think, $50 a month on music, and which is, to me, quite low. But for some people, I think they can't really imagine spending more than the 9.99 on music. And there's a lot been said about, Spotify launched the 9.99 model 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, and there's been several changes, shifts in the financial market, which would, even when you just look at inflation, like that price should be higher. And I wonder how Spotify is going to get themselves out of it. So I think that while I really support, the folks at like organizations like UMA, the United Musicians Artists. I'm gonna mess it up, but it's UMAW. It's a coalition or a union. I guess it's kind of a union now, in the U.S. of people and artists working in music, and they've done a lot of really amazing lobbying at against, or I guess at Spotify. And I think I really like champion those efforts, and I think it's amazing. But I think what attracted me to the Web3 space is that there's people also looking at alternative ways to operate.
Yeah, I think when you're presented with a bad platform or a bad model or an unfair model, sooner or later other people are going to branch off and try to find how to find a solution to that, and how to rectify Spotify as a whole other conversation. But I want to wrap up with this concept of Web3, NFTs, blockchain, crypto in general. Um, I remember back in 2015, 2016, in the music tech community, in the conferences, everybody was excited talking about that. Talking about blockchain, everybody would kind of glaze over and get a little confused about how it worked. And then, of course, once you had some success stories, you had the investors coming in and telling you, oh, this is just something you should invest in. So I think a huge problem that we're going to be facing, that we are facing, is how do we get over this when we've had a lot of bad actors use things like cryptocurrency to say, oh, this is an investment, and, basically commit fraud. So, I mean, what do you think is the future for decentralized platforms, for Web3 in general? Do you think that they're going to be able to overcome this reputation that's kind of been attached to everything that's decentralized now?
Sorry, I think something happened with my microphone. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you.
Cool. Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that for folks like not in the crypto market or familiar with these terms, we talk about like bull and bear markets. And bull markets are when there's like a lot of investment coming into the space and people are really profiting. And bear markets are sort of the exact opposite of that. And we've been in a bear market for almost a year now. And I think it's kind of rid a lot of the people who were just around to um, speculate, which is, or like who are just around for like a cash grab or to scam people. Not to say that those people don't exist still, but I think there's a lot less of them, which gives the people who have stuck around the opportunity to kind of like build new systems that are hopefully safer, and also just I think education is really important too, like getting people to understand the technology and how it works from like a much more from the ground up. I also suspect that we're going to start to see um, a lot of projects kind of turn away from this like crypto branding and focus a little bit more on like organizational models and alternative organizational models being the kind of like what spirit, like the sort of driving force of a lot of these projects. I think Web3 tools are still like an amazing way to collaborate. But yeah, like you said, we've seen like tons of really like awful scams, and there's absolutely like malice in the space. So I think that people who are going to start, like the people who, a lot of the people I know building right now are building things where like the tech is a lot more hidden than it is now. You know, you don't need to write your seed phrase in a notebook, or there's kind of new ways to interact with blockchains that are less risky, not entirely eliminating risk, but are less risky for for consumers. And I think I like to think back of like, earlier internet days. I feel like I've been having a lot of conversations about like torrenting and like file sharing and like, we were all getting viruses on our computers. And like, I remember having to like literally get rid of a computer because it had a virus that was so bad. And like, I feel like we're kind of in that phase of Web3. And I just hope it gets a little bit more user friendly. Like, I think UI UX in Web3 is absolutely a problem, and I hope and I believe that there's people thinking and asking those questions and trying to solve those problems.
Yeah, let's hope that kind of all of the scammers and fraudsters can fracture off, and we can move forward and build off of this. So thank you for joining me today. Hopefully that gives people much more information about what DAOs are, how they can get involved with organizations. I put up the website to the Refraction Festival for people who are interested in refractionfestival.com. And thank you for talking to me today.
Yeah, thank you for your time. And for folks interested, I'm pretty much always online. You can hit me up on Twitter. I'm Kaitlyn M. Davies on Twitter.
Okay. And I'll be lurking on the I'm on the Refraction Discord as well, so I'll be lurking around there as well.
Exciting. Well, hope to see you there and hope to see everyone there soon.
All right, thanks, Kaitlyn.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.
Kaitlyn Davies again for joining me today to talk about DAOs. Again, you can look at refractionfestival.com and Sound Obsessed, which she mentioned from Portrait XO, and Funds with Benefits as well. Thanks for joining